through the greatest journey. So I don't want to take up, I would love to answer your question after, but we have a very special guest for you today, and I don't want to take up any of her time. So here to share with you how a shoebox gift personally impacted her life, I want to introduce you to Giftlin.
Good morning. Good morning. I just want to thank Pastor Mark for opening up his church for us to have this wonderful event and that we could all gather. I want to thank Miss Jen and Miss Kathleen for putting this event together so that we can all learn more and just fellowship one another, that we already packed shoe boxes, so it's cool to be in the midst. And I want to thank all of you for coming here today. I know that a lot of you have traveled far from New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, anywhere that you've traveled from, or from down the street, we don't know. But thank you for coming. So, my name is Giftlin. I'm 16 years old. I'm a sophomore in high school. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I received a gift when I was back home in South Asia when I was 3 years old. And so I want to tell you my story today and to encourage you, because I know that all of you have been packing shoeboxes for such a long time. And sometimes it can be like, oh, am I really making an impact? But you definitely are. Just like you saw those videos and those pictures, you are making such an eternal impact that you have no idea on this end. So, did you know that where I come from, only 2.3% of the population are Christians? And there are so many non-Christians, so I'm so privileged to be born into a pastor's family, and even more privileged to just to know Christ and to be one of those Christians living in that area. So me receiving the shoebox was part of a much bigger story, and it was a story of faithfulness and complete trust in the Lord. So the town where my parents moved to when I was just 3 months old was mostly non-Christians, and so much so that my parents couldn't find a house to live in or a building to rent for a house of worship because no one really wanted to rent to Christians, just like the story that Miss Melissa shared. But God is so faithful, and through many different people and many different connections, we were able to get a one-bedroom apartment to live in and a bicycle shop for a place of worship. So now my parents also made trips into the village areas to reach those people that were outcasted from their own society, because it's so important to share the gospel with everyone around you. And it was during one of those times where not only I, but about 100 other children would receive their shoebox gift. So we had just finished the outreach, and it's in February, so a little bit after Christmas time. We had just finished the outreach to the children of that area, and my father had just shared the gospel with them. And so he told them that it was time to finish up, and we were going to hand out these surprises. So none of the other children knew what was going to happen, but I knew, because my parents were going to hand these shoeboxes out. So we prayed, and we began to pass them out. So my dad handed out shoeboxes, some of our volunteers handed out shoeboxes, and I remember helping my mom pass out shoeboxes to the kids. And as I was passing out each and every single shoebox, I really hoped that there would be one left for me. I just really wanted one of those boxes that I was passing out. But I wasn't guaranteed one because my parents wanted to make sure everyone that we did the outreach got a box. But as I finished passing them out, I realized that there was one left for me. And I was so excited, you cannot believe it. I mean, I was like, I'm passing them out, and I got one, finally, yay! So I got my shoebox, and we all sat down. As you can see, these are the people in the village areas. So we did a bunch of outreach here and there. So this is one of the final stops. And so we all got our shoebox, and we all prayed. We thanked God for the gifts that He has given us. And after we prayed, we counted 1, 2, 3. And we opened our shoebox all together. And I was so excited. I was 3 years old. And I looked at my shoebox. You can see the picture, next picture. That's me holding my shoebox. And I was just so excited. I looked at my shoebox, and I saw school supplies, which I loved, and I was so excited to use. I saw some new toys, all shiny and new, and I couldn't wait to play with them. And most importantly, I saw a doll, which you'll see on the next slide. And I loved all types of dolls, and this little one made me so very happy. And I guess because I was 3 years old, I didn't really realize the the amount of love that someone had once poured into that shoebox for me to be able to receive it. But I realize now just how much love someone put into that shoebox and just how amazing God is to be able to provide for a little girl in the midst of a village, in the middle of nowhere. And though I didn't know it, He knew it, and He had a plan for me that night. So receiving the shoebox was, of course, such a blessing for me, since my family, because our ministry was just forming, we were a very self-supported family. Some of the offerings that we would receive were in forms of grain and rice and new clothes for me, and that is how God took care of us. Our daily bread depended on Jesus, and I can attest that God does not let His children down. There was not a day when we were hungry, when we were bare, without hope. We always had more than enough because God provided for us. So of course, this shoebox was like such a blessing for us because, again, He provided for me in ways that I didn't know. He gave me the new toys to play with, the new supplies. But more than that, it was a spiritual encouragement for my family. You see, we were on the end that we're handing out the shoeboxes. We weren't just receiving them, we were handing them out as well. And these shoeboxes were a tool in our ministry. Because of these boxes, we were able to go into the village and reach these kids that otherwise would have never been reached. And so it just shows God's faithfulness. I mean, we can never plan this, but it shows how God takes care of us and how God is so, so faithful in His ways. Now, fast forward 13 years, and now my family lives in America. My dad first came here to do higher studies in ministry, and 3 years later, we were able to join him by God's grace. And the first year that we lived in America, my brother's school participated in packing shoeboxes. Now, when we found out about it, we were so excited. I mean, I was so excited when I received a shoebox when I was 3 years old, but now that I get to pack a shoebox for someone else, I was probably more excited to pack a shoebox than to receive a shoebox. And it's because it's so true, just as Jesus said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. I mean, we're so joyful when we receive presents, but when I thought about that day when I was packing the shoebox for someone else, I was like, thank you, God. One day I received it, but today I get to bless someone else. And so, in Christmas 2016, and that's my family at our church, this is when after we moved to America. So in Christmas 2016, I shared my story that I'm sharing with you today, to my church for the very first time. And it kind of almost fell by accident. I didn't really realize this was such an important story or a big story. I always thought, oh, it was something special that happened to me. But I shared the story with my church, and we were able to pack more shoeboxes than we could have imagined for our first year doing it. And in the summer of 2017, last summer, through God's divine plans and God's appointment, we were able to meet with Samaritan's Purse, and I got trained with them, and now I stand before you today. Every part of my story is just faithfulness of God. I mean, the shoebox I received is an example of God's faithfulness and God's provision. It shows how our God has a beautiful and distinct plan for each and every one of our life. And it also shows how God can use anyone and anything to touch anyone's life. It doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be small, but God can use anything to touch someone's life. And each and every day of my life has been a faithfulness. When we lived back home in South Asia, every part of our life was from faithfulness. Each day, our meals, our clothes were because of God. But even still today, we're standing on God's faithfulness. Everything that we do, all of us, we can attest that God is so faithful, and God provides for us, and God takes care of us. So I want to leave you with this. Usually, I do a call to action. I usually try to get people to pack shoeboxes. But considering as I looked around and I see all of you, you guys have, I don't need to remind you to pack shoeboxes. But I want to say thank you for all of you who have been packing for such a long time. I want to thank you because just how God is faithful to us, you have been faithful in your ministry and His calling to you. So I want to thank you on behalf of all my brothers and sisters around the world. I'm just one face out of the 157 million that have received a shoebox in all these years of Samaritan's Purse. So I want to encourage you to keep doing the ministry that God has called you to. Keep pursuing, because though you might not always see the benefits, you are definitely making an impact. And if I can still remember it 13 years later, and I know I'm going to remember it for the rest of my life, you're making an eternal impact in someone's life. So I want to leave you with this verse in Galatians 6:9 that says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." I mean, I don't know who sent my shoebox. It could have been one of you that's here today, but you are reaping a harvest, an eternal harvest by sending these little shoeboxes that we heard from Miss Melissa. So I want to thank you, and I just want to leave you with a little bit of statistics from last year. Last year we raised we packed more than 11 million shoeboxes, nearly 11 million shoeboxes, and out of those 11 million, 8.8 million came from just the U.S. alone. So all of your churches and all that you packed, we packed 8.8 million. And so this year's goal is 11 million shoeboxes, and for the U.S. goal is 9.1 million shoeboxes. So I want to encourage you, encourage your churches, encourage your families, encourage your friends to keep packing shoeboxes. Because I'm only one of the millions and hundreds of millions of kids that you're blessing around the world. So I want to thank you again for having me here today and for letting me share my story with you. And I want to just encourage you, keep doing it, keep blessing children around the world. Thank you.